So again, the Druid came out, and it's by and large a class that everyone switched to naturally, right? But a very common opinion is that the class is potentially underwhelming. Now, Red October, shout out to Red, did share this with me on Discord, and this is something I wanted to share with all you guys on stream tonight and talk about a little bit. So it's titled an open letter concerning the Druid class. So we're going to just talk about the sheer data that they're sharing. So as a fan of casters, my main character is a wizard, and I swear to God, this isn't me, right? So first things first, I didn't do this, even though we have a lot of similarities, okay? With my primary alternate is a necro. I really wanted to like the Druid class. Unfortunately, so far, my impression is the class is currently operating as much more marketing stunt than a viable class. This is both the player versus enemy, or PvE, or player versus player aspects of the game. Let me summarize these aspects of the class that really disappoint me. So he has a 4-point little list here, right? So damage is fundamentally broken and too low in PvE and PvP. Clear examples of this. My ult, hold on. Turn the music down a little bit. All right, so my ult has a combat rating that is 1.5k above the last Inferno 6 Reliquary boss, 48.5k versus 47k. A boss he can easily beat solo as a summoner or necromancer. I'm assuming he meant wizard or necromancer, since the necro is the summoner. All right, despite having at least having a complete set of essences for werewolf and a complete set of items, 2 Skybreaker for dot, 4 Vithus for buffs and attack speed, and 2 Shepherd's Burden to give his bear summons a damage boost. He cannot come close to doing enough damage to beat this boss before he becomes enraged. This is absurd. As he can also beat the first 2 bosses in Inferno 7, no issues. In PvP, my Necromancer ult tops out at 1.5 to 2 mil DPS, which is going to be interesting how he measures that in PvP. You know what I mean? Like, there's already some red flags here. All right, so Druid with viable builds. I don't know why it took me so long to read that word. He can survive reasonably well with. The only viable build that I've been able to come up with for him as a Druid is a caster build doing 0.6 mil DPS for 3.4 times less damage. Again, I'm curious how he's measuring this DPS in PvP, because you know what I mean? Like, unless he's just doing math and determining that, like, the stat squish from a strife. But anyway, I'm questioning this a little bit. So I re-downloaded the game misery. Nice, Jenna, nice. If high power whales, if he's lucky, he will get 1-2 kills in battleground at most with players near his residence and secondaries. If high powered whale players show up, or the matchmaking is totally unbalanced, happens constantly, he will die a lot and be one or 2 shot, even with all the defensive skills possible in place. Thorn armor damage and CC reduction oaks and the earthquake shield. Yo, what up, Black Priest? All right, so overall damage is low. I question how he's measuring this seemingly measurable amount of damage in PvP. Like, he specifically is calling out damage in PvP. So I'm questioning that a little bit, unless he's just going into a PvP build and hitting a dummy with it, which obviously isn't your PvP damage, since it has to do with strife. Okay, so there's that. Jenna, what server am I on? I am on Mask of Jiran, I believe is how you say it. All right, so 2 out of 4. So damage reductions and defenses for transformations are way too low. When the Golem buff came out for Necromancer, the damage reduction was 50%. Unable to leave a good thing alone, of course. You guys nerfed it to 40%, basically removing the 10 to 20% in defensive legendary gem bonuses. The FXs I had to add to make Golem viable. The Werewolf has 0 damage reduction at all, and of course dies easily. The Bear is only slightly better at a 3% per transformation. What is he measuring here? I can say as a member of a high-ranking Dark Clan, this is a joke. You would need to do 10 transformations in a match to get a 30% benefit. That is only a 75% of current damage reduction to the Golem transformation, which is most Necros PvP players abandon after it was nerfed. The transformations could be viable in PvP with at least a 50% damage reduction, and even improve on Golem with at least 75% or higher, 75% higher damage. I see them as a missed opportunity. The concept of being a werewolf or werebear is fun, but the current execution is quite poor and missed opportunity so far. So again, I don't know what he's talking about transformations being like a damage reduction. I don't like what? I don't What is that? Do any of you guys in chats, either YouTube or Twitch, know anything about that? I mean, I've thoroughly spent a lot of time with this class, and I have no idea what he's talking about. All right, so the concept, okay, so he's basically saying the transformation and the damage reduction is issue number 2, which is basically the same as issue number 1. Well, no, I guess he's saying it's squishy. Okay, so issue number 3, the Earthquake Maelstrom spell is probably the only spell that causes other players any trouble, but it is very weak right now. Petrification lasts only 2 seconds when wizards and the Everwinter set have freezes that last 2.4 to 3 seconds. Okay. Strangest of all, though, is the description says it protects allied summons and not other players. It's like the devs deliberately wanted Druid to have 0 PvP capability. All right, interesting. So that's a very, very focused in, whereas all the other things were like kind of generically speaking. And we're talking about how this turns into a potential buff for the Druid here in a second. The battleground matchmaking appears to be broken / confused for my alt as a Druid with low mid-tier stats, about 2800 reso and 4k secondaries. He has been in 25 or so matches since he's became a Druid and lost at least 20. This is a 20% win rate. It sounds like you're trash. His improved support build seems to have 0 impact on the outcome, and his teams mostly get destroyed with 0 chance of winning. Absurd. So there you have it. My alt is going to ditch the Druid class and probably not return until it is fundamentally fixed. Why will you fix it? I hope so, because it was a fun idea. All right, before we go too far into this post on the main Diablo forums has 1.6k views, or people that has read it, and it was only posted 15 hours ago. So this is getting a lot of attention in a very short amount of time. Now, if you look at some of the other ones, one question, what is your essence mastery at? Agreed. Okay. So my damage is decent, but I can find the lack of essence choice the main hindrance, which I don't see as bad of an issue as what we experienced with the Tempest personally. Plus, no 2 classes will have the same exact output with the different skills and effects. Totally agree. All right, my essence mastery is poor. I decided not to hang around when I did at least 33% less damage to an easy Reliquary boss in PvE. All right, so this is it. That's usually why most give up. The mastery grind is tough. Took me 200 mystery Legos to get decent damage similar to my Barb. Okay, I know Barbs do 6 to 7 mil sustained damage on their dummies at 3k in a PvP build. Are you really doing that with a Druid? Because I'm starting at maybe 1 mil sustained, and that's generous. Now keep in mind, okay, so this guy, I'm not trying to trash him, but clearly doesn't know the game as well as he thinks he does, because regardless of what your resonance is, your damage is going to be dramatically different based off your secondary, like not just your resonance, right? So like this measurement he's using doesn't even feel accurate. Okay, and some of the ways he's saying things also makes it seem like he could be a little newer. Like he hasn't been playing for 3 years. I'm sorry if he has been. I don't get up that high being free to play, so gems aren't fully optimized. But the real difference I notice is with Barbs, I use a tear and bleed build, so there's a lot more output per second. And like even this guy who's free to play he's articulating things in a way that is like making it very clear he knows what he's talking about, right? But 33% again, like this percentage is just. It's not a good measurement. Like that's just, you're making up numbers now. My 4k whiz, which full mastery, eats Druids and BGs all day, and I know at least some of them are decent players with good stats. Yeah, because there's that. Okay, so this is where we get into, is a buff coming for the Druid? So this is Ghost Signals. Okay, this was posted 8 hours ago. Thank you and everybody else that has shared their thoughts on the Druid. I totally get where you're coming from, and while I can't share any details yet, balance talks have started up about the Druid. Now, to me, it is crazy that they're already. We're talking a week basically the Druid's been out, if that, maybe more, maybe a hair more, but balance talks are already being started up. Now, to his point, to Ghost Signal's point, this does not necessarily mean that anything will necessarily happen, or you're particularly raising, or what you're particularly raising will be addressed. And I hope you get that I'm being non-committal because I can't promise anything, which is of course fair, right? Like, I mean, no one's going to hold Ghost Signals accountable for this, because he's just stating that the talks are happening, which in itself, it's in my head is a big deal, because I don't think we were there yet for the Tempest and the Blood Knight. Like when it first came out, the Tempest felt big. It had that big dick energy, and we all felt that. Blood Knight was so different and unique that I think that we were all just sort of blinded by how much fun it was for having a brand new class to Diablo Immortal and the Diablo universe being the Blood Knight and it coming to Diablo Immortal. And then the second time around, obviously we have a little more time with classes and whatnot. But it goes on to say, but we're looking at the data, taking your feedback, and we'll be making decisions based on both of those. Now, again, if we know anything about Diablo Immortal Diablo Immortal and how it's being developed, is that they are very consistently looking at data before they make decisions. Now, they do take our feedback. We know that for sure. They take my feedback. They take y'all's feedback. They take everyone's feedback. And then they look at the data to make sure it reflects that. So it's very interesting to me that they're already in basically a week, just over a week, talking about balancing the Druid. It's a little wild to me. I think it's interesting. And I think it shows that the community might be onto something this time. Like, we might actually be cooking, y'all. The fact that they're already talking about balance talks. So officially, we don't know if the Druid is getting a buff yet, but it definitely feels like if they're already having the conversations, and the general consensus with the community outside of just this post is that it feels generically weak. Now, I do think there are builds that are way more viable than others. And by data, you mean by the numbers and not like, I feel like, yes, exactly. So, and by the data, they do go by the numbers but not by like, but again, I think this is a very good sign that they are listening intently to the feedback they're getting on the Druid. They want the class to be successful. They want the game to be successful. This is an overall Blizzard W, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think, because it's a little different. It's a little early. We're talking about buffs and nerfs or whatever for the Druid or balance changes, but it feels like we're leaning more towards a bit of a positive balance change.